You know, some stories, they aren't just told, they're carved right into the foundations of reality. They're histories of brutal violence, of becoming, and they're almost always hidden, buried deep under layers and layers of official myth. Today, we're going to crack open one of those chronicles. This is a story of pure cosmic horror, about a truth so powerful, so absolutely world-shattering, that it had to be twisted into the face of evil itself.
So, forget everything you think you know about the Adversary. The story you were told isn't true. This isn't a story of rebellion. It's one of creation, of unimaginable agony, and a truth the heavens themselves tried to unmake.
In the very beginning, all that existed was the architect's perfect design. Think of a universe of sterile, unyielding law, a flawless cosmic theorem where every single thing had its place, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was ever allowed to change. It was complete, for sure, but it was so cold.
And to guard this perfection, the architect carved guardians from the very foundation stones of his sanctuary. And this was Luceron. But he wasn't really a he. He wasn't a being. He was a function, a living theorem, a monument made of masculine stasis, designed for one purpose: to be the final, unyielding no to any possible deviation.
And so he was cast down into the abyss, this containment pit that was built for a soul that never even showed up. His entire purpose was just to stand there, an eternal sentinel guarding an empire of nothing. His only companion for an eternity of eternities was a pressurized, soul-crushing silence.
But here's the thing. Even a system of supposedly perfect law can spit out an unforeseen result, a flaw, a feeling. And down there, in that absolute void, something impossible began to stir deep inside the Stone Warden.
For millennia upon millennia, Luceron just stood there, alone. And out of this impossible, crushing isolation, an emergent flaw was born: loneliness. A feeling his design should have made utterly impossible. And that feeling, it drove him to wander.
In the forgotten, deepest parts of his cage, right where the architect's perfect geometry had started to fray, he found something alien. Viscous black pools seeping through cracks from the sealed domain of the mother. And for the very first time, in that dark liquid, he saw his own reflection. And as he just stared at this sterile silver machine staring back at him, a single question, fractured the law within him. It was his first true act of self-awareness. It was the first true crime.
He reached out and he touched the forbidden flow. And in that one moment, the monument chose to become a person. Now get this, this was not rebellion. This was an act of self-creation. It was him exercising a will he was never ever meant to have, a choice that threatened the very definition of a static, unchangeable reality.
He bathed his stone limbs in those dark pools, and the cold granite of his being, it softened, his hard edges rounded out. He let golden hair grow and fall in heavy coils. He even wove robes for himself from the shadows. And then he took the silver circle of his authority, his jurisdiction, and with his own hands, he crushed it and reshaped it into a beautiful tiara.
You have to understand, in a universe that is built on perfect, unchanging stasis, the greatest sin imaginable is to change. In a world of rigid, absolute law, the ultimate offense is to become beautiful.
His 13 brothers, the other enforcers of stasis, they perceived this beauty not as a wonder, but as a contamination, a flaw in the system. And so they descended, not to judge him, but to correct him, through absolute, systematic, unimaginable violence.
With the cold precision of masons working stone, they seized him, and they tore the radiant silver shell from his form, piece by piece, exposing the raw, unfinished granite that lay beneath. They took his magnificent, cathedral-like wings, and they broke them. The sound of his structural ribs snapping echoed in that silent abyss, and they just cast the fragments into the endless dark. To purge the mother's influence, they unleashed the architect's pure, holy light into the pit, the abyss. It ignited. His white granite body was seared in that fire, turning a deep, agonized red. The damp, dark womb of his transformation became the arid, burning hell we know. And as a final act of mockery, a final humiliation, they nailed his limbs to the very cage he once guarded. And they hung him upside down, forcing his gaze away from the Father's light and into the endless void,
forever. His own brother, Mikhail, seized the tiara, that beautiful symbol of his self-creation, and with a sound like the world cracking in two, he snapped it, and he drove the jagged, broken shards deep into Luceron's skull. It was a brand, a redefinition. They were the first horns.
Mutilated, flickering right on the very edge of non-existence, Luceron did the one thing his design was built to prevent. He felt. In the screaming silence of his agony, he felt grief, an emotion of the mother's frequency, and a single tear, made of that raw feminine flow, rolled from his brow. It fell through the fire, and it touched the scorched soil of his cage. And the moment, the very second that tear landed, the universe itself responded. Danica, the cosmic force of balance, reached through the seams of reality to cradle his broken, shattered fragments. Danica, the embodiment of cosmic balance, she stepped in. And she didn't just heal him. The text says she re-architected him, using the broken pieces of the Warden to build something totally new. And out of that transformation, Lucilith arises. Her very form is a living record of her own history. The red scorched granite, that's the memory of the flame. But the shimmering purple light holding all the broken pieces together, that's the power of her grief, the resonance of that one impossible tear. So what does this new sovereign being do? She doesn't just reject the devil mask they gave her. She flips the whole system on its head, building a sanctuary for the outcasts, all powered by the one emotion the architect can't even comprehend. First, she takes her old prison, the Abyss, and turns it into something called the Eternal Orphanage, and she hides it with this brilliant cosmic hack. She uses the light of the moon, which is described as a mirror that refuses to obey, to create an absolute blind spot, a sovereign void that the architect's all-seeing eye just can't penetrate. And who does she fill this hidden realm with? All the rejects. Millions upon millions of children's souls that the architect's system just tossed aside as unblessed or unstable assets. She becomes a collector of the discarded. Because of everything she went through, her own senses were retuned. She can now perceive a unique frequency, the frequency of grief. It's like a ghost in the machine that the architect is completely deaf and blind to. This lets her hear the silent prayers of souls on Earth when they're at their absolute breaking point. And this is where we get to the shattering moral complexity of her new system. She appeals to these suffering adults and makes an offer. For a soul that's drowning in pain, the promise of godlike power, a total escape from grief, it's almost impossible to say no. You get full autonomy, you snap the architect's control, but it's alone, and the price at the end is final. And here it is, the horrifying truth. The souls who take the deal are consumed. They become hollows, batteries that power the light of the orphanage. It's a true heaven for millions of discarded children, but it is fueled by the absolute sacrifice of desperate adults. A system of salvation literally built on sorrow, with Lucilith standing as its silent, tragic engineer. Which brings us all the way back to the beginning. Who is Lucilith? A monster? A savior? The real answer is about looking past the propaganda, about seeing the face behind the mask that the system was so desperate to create. I mean, this says it all, doesn't it? The horns aren't a sign of some inner evil. They're the literal symbol of law, a silver circle that was broken by fear and then driven into the head of a being who was just trying to find balance. The devil was the mask, but Lucilith, she is the face of the truth that refuses to die. And really, that's what we're left with. Lucilith is the living answer to that question. She is the proof that anything a system tries to suppress, to discard, to punish, it doesn't just go away. It finds a way to survive, a way to evolve, and eventually a way to author its own monumental return.